Hello parents, I hope everyone is doing okay. This week's fine motor activity is going to again play on those cutting skills, and this time we are going to use the spray bottles. Like the previous activities, this one is also geared towards 3 years and up. It is considered a beginner's activity. That said, we are going to try and make it a little bit more challenging for more advanced scissor users, or we could even modify it to make it a little bit easier. The material is going to be very simple. We just need some water in the spray bottle and some plants, whether these plants are outdoor plants, indoor plants, or even fake plants. That would also work. For the activity description, pretty much all the child has to do is use that spray bottle and squeeze it and get some water out to water the plants. You could go to the backyard and do that for outdoor plants. If you live in an apartment, you could do indoor plants. Or if you don't have indoor plants, and you have a fake plant, you could pretend to water the plant. If you don't have any of those, you could just make it as part of helping mom, helping dad to clean. So it could be cleaning the mirrors, wiping the tables, and it would feel to the child like they're helping. They're also taking more responsibility in the household chores. Some of you may wonder, okay, well, sounds good, but my child is a little bit advanced. How can I make it a little bit harder? So one way to make it harder is to just increase the workload on the hand. So that would be either by really filling the bottle to add more weight. So they have to manage now holding it and really holding it tight so it's not falling from their hands, and squeezing. And then the other method we could do is, again, just making sure that you're using the one hand as opposed to compensating by two hands. Another way you could do it such that it's more fun, there is more areas of development that you are incorporating in the activity, so it's not just cutting skills, which means it will be more demanding on the child, is to go outdoors. Now the weather is a little bit better, and you could use chalk on the sidewalk. You could randomly put some numbers on the sidewalk and then call out a number, and then the child will have to identify the number and use their their spray bottle and erase the number. Another way to do it is, instead of using numbers, you could use letters or even words. So depending where your child is at in their reading level, so if they are still beginning to identify letters, then one way is to call out a letter instead of a number and have the child use the spray bottle to erase that letter. You could even, if you're working on the child's name, you could even have the child find the letters in his name in order and have the child erase the letter. An even more advanced reader, you could have words written down, and then the child will have to find the word that you call out, and then they would use the spray bottle to erase the word. You can get really creative with spray bottles. So one more way, and it's my last method here, but there are plenty more ideas on Google that you can find, and you can pick and choose the ones that kind of work for your supplies that you have at home. But this one, all what it requires is a bin. You fill a little bit of water in it, and now they have to use the squeeze bottle to aim. And it's not just random spraying. They have to coordinate their eye-hand movement and such that they are actually aiming at the floating lids. So you could use floating lids, you could have bathtub toys, whichever, pretty much anything that can float, you could use it and kind of play an aiming game. Okay, so let's say now you have the other kind of problem, which is you see your child is struggling with the main activity that we described earlier. So what you could do is make sure that the spray bottle that the child is using is not filled, fully filled, because that will add weight, which means more demands on the hand. But also make sure that if you're trying to reduce the weight, that you're not going the other extreme, because what happens is the water at the bottom and the child now is squeezing but nothing is coming out, and they have to position the spray bottle in really awkward way such that the water can enter through the straw and squeeze. So it will become very frustrating to the child. So just make sure just enough water that regardless of how he's holding the spray bottle, that the water can get in easily and then he can see the outcome right away. Use two hands. So if the child can't do it quite yet with the one hand, start with two and then progress to one. If all else fails, you can go back to the turkey baster level. So turkey baster is a bit easier than the than a spray bottle. So you could either go back to last week's activity and practice some more, or you could use even those same activities and use the turkey baster instead of the spray bottle, just for variation. The last thing that you want to check is how much the child has to stretch their hand to be able to wrap their fingers around and squeeze. If the child has to squeeze like this is much harder than that. So if the spray bottle is too big in their hand, which means they have to do more tip fingers, so they have to do all the work, all the efforts coming from the tips of the finger, that is way harder on the child as opposed to doing this kind of movement. And some more modifications you could do that doesn't necessarily make it harder from a fine motor perspective or easier, more of an enrichment. It would be going outdoors. So this will add more to the sensory component of your activity, because now you're having the different lighting, the different background sounds. If you're doing it on a surface like grass versus the concrete. So again, they're getting multiple different input than, let's say, going just indoors. Taking turns with siblings. So if you're doing a rotation between if you have multiple children in the household, you can take a rotation just like the other activity, and you could, again, you're working on potential conflict resolution, waiting, that stop and go, because now they have to stop to wait and then go and start their turn. You could add some other components, like talking about the weather today. Is it hot versus cold? Is it sunny, cloudy? And not only does it enrich their vocabulary, but also later, as you are trying to teach the child what's an appropriate clothing for the day today, how should we dress for the day, it starts to feed into those life skills. You first need to identify what the weather is to be able to match the proper clothing that you need to go outside. And then you could also talk about the seasons of the year. Oh, look, it's sunny. It's springtime, or it's summertime. Oh, what comes after summertime? And so on. So again, you could just enrich the conversation to add more again, more of the learning experience to your child. So this sums up the activity of the week for fine motor skills. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. We send those mass emails. You can just reply to one of those emails or look in the sender line. That would be my personal email at work. So you can email, and I'm checking my emails regularly. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this activity.